Welcome back to another episode of Logistics Remix. Today's guest brings over 20 years of experience across retail, e-commerce, transportation, and parcel strategy, helping companies build smarter shipping programs and reduce cost. Nate Skiver is the founder of LPF Spend Management, a parcel and e-commerce delivery consulting firm that helps brands reduce parcel spend, optimize carrier strategy, and navigate the increasingly complex pricing environment. Now, prior to launching LPF in 2019, Nate spent 17 years inside major retailers where he was instrumental in building an $80 million parcel program that generated more than $10 million in savings, led parcel transportation strategy for a $15 billion apparel retailer, and ran global order management operations supporting a $900 million e-commerce business. Nate, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me. And that was quite the introduction. It was, I'm sure, a mouthful there. We probably could have cut that down even more. But joking aside, I do appreciate it. I get to chat about one of my favorite topics. I think one of the few, but carrier parcel GRIs, which I talk about all the time. But I'm glad today we get to chop it up a little bit, and everybody else gets to hear it. So.
Absolutely. So they're going to all get to benefit from the insights that you're going to share with us about what's happening going into 2026. And I'm excited to have this episode. I again, you are a wealth of knowledge in the parcel space. You're known as a thought leader in the space. And, what I wanted to start first is, look, you spent 17 years inside retail and e-commerce transportation before starting your firm, LPF Spend Management. What I wanted to know is, after those 17 years, like, what pushed you to make the jump into consulting?
Yeah, it was something that I passively thought about for 10 years. So I I started in Parcel in 2007. Shortly after that, I had the chance. I was with Abercrombie, the chance to work on a Parcel RFP project, and I worked alongside a Parcel consultant. So I had like front row seat to the process, the strategy, the negotiations, all the details of contracts. So then is when I knew I wanted to do it, at least uh, conceptually. And then life happens, career. You don't exactly just decide, what is it, 8 years in the career just to jump out on your own. So I didn't do that. And but I continued to focus on Parcel. So I built a lot of experience. I really, really loved it, still do. But there was something that I just basically, I wanted to be able to share that experience and provide value to more than one company at a time. And so I reached a point in 2019 where I really started to think about consulting seriously. And I reached out to a former boss of mine who had since moved to a different company, and I was going to talk with him about it. I texted him and said, "Hey, this is what I'm thinking." He said, "Well, if you really want to do it, I have your transition client lined up for you, but we better figure it out pretty quickly." And so it was his company. That was in July. We talked about it later that afternoon, and then I left my 17-year career in retail about 7 weeks later. So.
Amazing story. And sometimes it takes someone just giving you a chance, right? I mean, it's, a lot of it
Exactly.
is you came ready, you came with a prepared mind to start this journey and start your company. But it was your former boss that said, "Yeah, I'll take a chance. Let's do this."
Yes, and then I decided I needed to take a chance on myself. So I waited for 10 years, but that's now been 6 years ago, and I really enjoyed it.
Well, there's a saying, better late than never. And of course, 2019, I mean, you couldn't have started in a better time, right before, the pandemic hit and e-commerce really took off. Just curious, like like if you think about the time you were inside the retailers, right, and managing their parcel programs, to what you're seeing today, what retailers are dealing with today, like what feels like the most different from those days?
I think I mean, there are a lot of differences. There's still some things that are the same that I'll probably just throw a few comments in there. But I think the biggest changes have probably just been how the market has changed, and then how that's been reflected with how retailers have built their programs or maybe changed their programs. And a lot of that has to do with a few things. One is there are many, many more carrier options than there were even 5 to 6 years ago. The technology, I think, to orchestrate those options, like optimize either the carrier options, the services, really advanced, I think, quite a bit in this past 5 to 6 years. And where that's different is there are more retailers, I think, that are being intentional with delivery. So they're utilizing those resources, whether it's technology, the carriers, to actually design a program with some purpose to improve the customer experience, or um, you know maybe even reduce expense, but do that instead of kind of defaulting to, I'm going to ship everything with UPS or I'm going to ship everything with FedEx. Plenty of those companies still exist, which is fine. It's one of the reasons why I do what I do. But it is very different. And I think it's going to continue to evolve and move that direction just based on market changes. And there's a whole host of other things we can talk about that goes into that. But that's where I think see the biggest difference is some intentional design around solutions, and the market looks different because of it also.
Yeah, and it makes things a little bit more complex when there's more players,
Hmm.
more I mean, by players, last mile delivery providers. There's more of these systems that you mentioned, like the multi-carrier shipping software technologies, which have really unlocked an opportunity to use
Hmm.
multiple providers. And so now, the game's gotten bigger.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is more complex, but like you said, there's solutions to manage it. And so I think more companies, they are, but also more companies need to explore more deeply and then be willing to make some decisions and, take, I think, calculated risks. And then we'll continue to see these changes like evolve.
And Nate, there's just so much to keep up with, and there's so much going on in this industry. There's a lot of changes, not as only growing in terms of parcel in e-commerce, but also you've got new entrants. Not even just the smaller entrants, but you've got these like large technology companies like Amazon, DoorDash, right, getting into the game. And um, and I think what I've really appreciated about what you do is you put out some of the best parcel analysis on and content on LinkedIn. A
Thank
lot
you.
of breaking news. You present things in a simple way to consume. How did that get started? Your posts on LinkedIn, and like what drives you to share insights with the industry?
Yeah, I guess it kind of started honestly by accident. I started creating content consistently, like posting daily, at least Monday through Friday, at the beginning of 2021. So I'm pretty much 5 years into that, and I didn't have this perfectly formed plan on how to create content and like how to drive, conversions and prospects and all that stuff. It wasn't that. I wanted to be able to share experience, like share my thoughts and create engagement and get like, visibility to parcel and delivery. Like I just think, to an extent, sometimes within especially large organizations, it's just not prioritized. So I try to do that, and it's a combination of all those things of wanting to educate, share information, but also put some things out there, maybe thoughts that aren't 100% that I'm the expert. It's just trying to create engagement and get some feedback. And so over time, that kind of evolved to, I mean, I do have at least some structure to it now, a little bit of organization, things like that. I like to have some fun with it because one of the things that I don't want to say I didn't like about it, but when I was working in retail, you are working for an employer. You have to be mindful about what you say, where you say it, where you put certain information publicly. And I'm not going to say I don't have to worry about that now, but I own it. So if something doesn't go well, I'm the one responsible. But I enjoy some of that, I guess autonomy, and it creates some interesting discussions, or at least DM exchanges. I'll say that.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of engagements on your posts. One thing that I appreciate is sometimes I remember, okay, wait, Nate broke this information down, or there's some rule change, and he did a really long post on it, but it's been months, and so it's really hard to go back and find stuff on LinkedIn.
Yes.
One of the things that I know you do is you consolidate all of your posts into one large PDF, and you basically like give it away. And I think like for one of them, like you charge them, it's like nominal. I've
Hmm.
downloaded them, I've purchased them. So I think that's a really helpful resource. Um, I think is available through your website. But it basically gives me the ability to go back and say, wait a minute, what was so and so's carrier market share in
Hmm.
2023 and through 2025? And I can go back to your posts and just like quickly search through it. It's been pretty helpful. So yeah, I think if you don't enjoy doing something on a daily basis, you're probably going to give up after a year or 6 months. You've been doing it for 5 years, and you've really made a name for yourself in the industry. Today, we this is like a special episode, is what I'm calling it. We're going to talk about something that's going to be near and dear to everyone's hearts in this industry. If you're managing small parcel, you are thinking about costs probably on a daily basis, maybe
Hmm.
weekly, monthly. But you are looking ahead in the next few weeks as we enter the new year to carrier general rate increases that are coming. And we're going to talk about some of these. So we're going to highlight, the national carriers today. I know you brought some material, which could be super helpful for us. But the general, can you just talk about like what is just the baseline, like what does a general rate increase entail? And one of the things I've noticed, if you can mention it, like we're seeing increases on the higher end than
Hmm.
historical. And so curious, just like if you could just paint a broad stroke, like what about this year's general rate increase cycle are you noticing?
The rate increases this year, and to kind of describe it generally a little bit, is the general rate increase. We'll, like you mentioned, we'll talk about UPS, we'll talk about FedEx, Postal Service. There's a time of the year, end of December, early January, or sometime in January, that most, if not all, of the rates, base rates and surcharges, increase at varying amounts and percentages, right? And that process has been in place for a very long time. And to your point, though, the way that especially UPS and FedEx will communicate broadly a GRI is an average rate increase for the base rates. And we'll talk about some details, but they kind of average it and say 5.9%. Like that's actually what it's been the past couple of years, just below the historical high of 6.9%. And um, and so they do that, and it's kind of simplistic, but simplistic in nature of summarizing it. But it's incredibly complex if you're a package shipper to try to decipher all this stuff. And so what I think stands out to me somewhat is I've been doing this for a long time, right? But we both have, and uh, it kind of becomes almost a standard rate increase. You know what? It's 5.9%. Kind of work almost conditioned to it, and we'll talk about some of those details. There's some danger there in being too comfortable, I think, as a package shipper with how predictable some of the GRIs have become. But what comes with that is there is a much higher frequency of rate increases between the GRIs. And we won't dive into all the details of that today. I think maybe a couple of examples, but that's kind of those two things together are kind of what is a little bit different, maybe than even this time last year, is that there's that big event that is the GRI that everybody focuses on, rightfully so. But then now there is almost a monthly kind of rate increase or surcharge change. It's a lot to keep up with. So we'll jump into details here in a minute.
Yeah, that sounds good. I think you're referring to fuel surcharge, some SRO charges, some rules. I know you've got some. You're going to do a screen share, so you want to pull up your slides, and as you pull them up, I do think that a lot of shippers misread. If you can share the slides, misread the GRIs at the very much the headline level. You mentioned 5.9%. And kind of as you walk through this, I am, okay, thank you for pulling this up. And
Mhm.
just in case anyone's listening, so we've got a slide here showing the 2026 general rate increase of what looks like, and that you'll go through it. But they're misreading it because they're just looking at the GRI level. And instead of relying on like specifics, right? And so maybe you could talk as you go through it, talk about how they can model like that the specific GRI to what they're doing in their business and to see what the cost increases for them.
Yes, and we'll talk through some of, I think, examples of what those increases are as they're communicated, and then how that can differ maybe with a particular shipper and kind of some steps to do that. And I think just to explain a little bit about this kind of what we have, this 5.9% that I mentioned before for UPS and FedEx. USPS is a little bit different because it's variable by service. Um, when UPS and FedEx communicate this, again, that 5.9%, it's actually an average for, let's say, a service, ground. And I'll pull up an example in a moment. An average increase of how the rates increase across all their customers. So if you take all of the customer volume that they have for ground, UPS, and then you apply the new 2026 rates, UPS is saying that average or calculation comes out to 5.9%. Well, if you, as a customer of UPS, individual customer, if your volume is not precisely the average, then it will be different. It could be lower, could be higher. And I think that is probably just quickly an example of, if we look at that, this is UPS ground. And what this is just a very simple, I mean, out of Excel, uh, taking the rate increase, the rates for 2026, and for each rate cell of weight and zone, the percentage increase over 2025, published rates. And since that average that we saw was 5.9%, you can actually see the majority really is real close to that, 5.9, 6%, something like that. But there's a segment there in the middle of, we'll just call it 6 to 10 pounds. That is less than 5.9%, more or less like 5.4, 5.5. And so if I'm a customer and I ship UPS ground volume and all of my volume is 2 or 3 pounds, then 5.9% is going to land right on the nose there. But if half of my volume just happens to land, in that 6 to 10 pound range, then my increase might be lower. It might be 5.6 or 5.7 in total. And that's really what, in a simplistic way of how you can determine what the impact is on your own costs, is there's two ways to do it. One, there are providers, software providers, Parcel Spend Management, that have solutions that does this for you. So that's always good. It's efficient. But if you either don't have a partner or you just want to check it and do it yourself, literally, pivot table. I know it's like, very 1999, but taking the volume and pivoting it by, build weight and zone, you have your package count, you multiply the rates, you get your costs, and you measure that over your costs for 2025. And
Yeah,
that's
totally.
exactly.
That totally makes sense. I'm looking at this and I'm saying, okay, a zone 5 1 pound package is going up 5.9%, exactly as the stated headline GRI.
Mm-hmm.
But but again, UPS for a 10 pound zone 5 package. It's going up 5.4%. I do wonder why is it such a it's a pretty good, pretty good size difference. Do you have any insights on why we're seeing kind of the 7 to 10 pound range volume not go up as high going into next year as like the 1 pound volume?
I'll say, I guess, not precisely for sure. I mean, because I don't know kind of the UPS side of things to explain it in certainty, but it can be a couple of different things. One is prior, so obviously these, I didn't state this, these rates increase, even what we're looking at a variable percentage, like in each individual cell, each year. So if last year there was a higher increase, perhaps I'm just kind of using an example, in that 6 to 10 pound range, then UPS is not increasing as high, this year. The other way to look at that is maybe through analysis, UPS has determined that weight segment across all the volume, all the customers that we have is really favorable. Like we like that. It's smaller, kind of dense, maybe. It's got, it's a good profile. Why don't we not increase that as much? Uh, so we get more of that volume, maybe from other carriers that they work with too, uh, to increase, kind of our costs and things like that, so it's more beneficial. A lot of different ways to look at it. I mean, it's all with purpose on the UPS side. Bottom line is they're trying to drive more revenue, however they get it.
Yeah, I mean the way I look at it is okay, if it's a lower increase, they're probably trying to get more of that type of
Hmm.
characteristic of package. It's a higher increase, which we'll go through some of these. Well, they're probably by raising rates saying, they still want more volume, but they want to do it at a higher price.
Yes, or we will look at an example later, and it's not UPS, where maybe a carrier might have, I don't want to say a monopoly, but I mean, cornered the market on a particular volume segment. And so if there isn't as much competition, or at least they don't think there is, then by increasing rates significantly, they're increasing their revenue a lot. So we'll see.
All right. Well, we're off to a good start.
We want to jump in here.
Yeah, yeah, let's go through it. So you already started with UPS. We're going to continue with UPS. So what are you showing us here and what should shippers expect?
Yeah, so I won't go through, blow by blow here, everything, but the way that I have some of this summarized is on the base rates, which is what we just looked at an example of an increase, just focusing on ground to try to keep it simple. We don't have only have so much time. And then key surcharges, because that is really the dynamic kind of part of the pricing. It changes frequently. It is comprising really a higher percentage of the total cost for a lot of package shippers, especially those who ship to residential areas. So e-commerce, retail companies. So we'll focus on that and just go through kind of what's normal, what's not, stuff like that. And from a UPS ground standpoint, we just looked at an example, so we don't have to dig into the details too much, but uh, kind of pulls in that first point of 5.7% average of 1 to 10 pounds. So if you take, both the segment and the lightweight and then what we talked about, it's less than 5.9, but it's still, 5.9, 5.7% on your costs from 2025. That's not small. And so that has to be, accounted for, calculated. Um, and then, really, I think one thing that I just want to point out here, and it's included on some of the other slides, but I mentioned, and you actually went into detail a little bit on the other rate increases that happen outside of the GRI. And one of those that's actually become pretty frequent, especially for UPS, is changing the fuel surcharge table, which effectively changes the surcharge itself, the fuel surcharge percentage. And UPS announced a change a few weeks ago, or I'm sorry, back in November, I think, late November, that's effective on January 5th. And it's a 1% fuel surcharge increase. And fuel percent as a surcharge applies to not every other charge that you might have on your invoice, but pretty darn close. And so it's effectively a 1% almost total rate increase. And that's kind of the danger of getting too comfortable with some of the other items we'll take a look at is they are kind of normal, this 5.7 to 5.9% on ground, some of the other surcharges. But when you add fuel increases, it compounds and
Right.
it's a problem.
Right, because it's going to add to the base rate, then it's going to add to accessorial fees, right? So it's not just calculated on the base rate; it's on the majority of the charges.
Exactly. Exactly. So that's, I think, the point here with the surcharge, fuel surcharge. And that's, again, from January 5th on, there's a higher fuel surcharge. Just so happens that's the 10th time that fuel surcharge will have increased in a little over 2 years. Not
So
that
Nate,
anybody's
I'm
counting.
reading this. I'm reading this 5.7% for the lightweight, 1 to 10 pounds, plus the 1% for fuel surcharge. Is that is that a 6.7%
I mean,
increase?
in kind of basic math, yes. Like if someone
Yeah.
is having to answer that question, uh, and then there's some other surcharges too that are increasing. Um, Actually, not too far from that high 6% range, almost 7%. We'll take a look. And so these surcharges here, additional handling charge and large package, pretty complex. The criteria to determine if this particular surcharge applies. And again, kind of on the surface, when you take a look, the percentages, it's not that they're small. I don't want to downplay something that's 7 to 7.5% on average for these two surcharges. But it's either in line or actually the percentage is slightly lower than some really large percentage increases this time last year. But what happens is in red, there are criteria changes that for these two surcharges that'll be effective in January. And I'm not going to go through the details of what all that is, but technically, I guess it's outside of the GRI. If you just want to say UPS GRI, December 22nd. But kind of like the fuel surcharge, it's an additional change that's going to increase costs for some shippers.
Nate, just take a pause. You said
Mhm.
December 22nd. That's December 22nd, 2025. So the
Yes,
increase is starting, the general rate increase is starting before 2026 with
it
UPS.
is. That is, and I failed to mention this earlier. I guess to UPS's credit, that they're squeezing another, what is that, 10 days, I guess, full 10 days of revenue into 2025. That is something that they've done for the last several years now. Whereas we'll look at some other carriers, it's after usually the 1st of January. So good call out. It's before 2026 starts that this is effective.
Okay. All right. Well, they'd love to hear that you credited them with that start.
Well, again,
Um,
if I'm looking at it from UPS's perspective, then I want revenue and I want to do the best I can to maximize that. I don't really look at it that way. Usually, I'm trying to help companies, manage their expense, hopefully reduce it sometimes, even if that means less revenue for UPS, FedEx, or maybe some other carriers. Um, and
Makes
so,
sense. Makes
just
sense.
real quick,
And go ahead.
go ahead. I was just going to say,
I was,
um,
yeah, you go for it.
we won't go through the details for this surcharge, but for companies that ship big and bulky, so a kind of oversized package, something that weighs 40 to 50 pounds also. But there are some changes that will make much more potentially of your volume subject to these two surcharges. And these are the ones that are $40, $50, $100+ in some cases. So definitely do that analysis now to determine what the impact will be in January, and try to um, troubleshoot that, whether it's negotiating some other options maybe too.
Yeah, definitely. I second that. I think if someone's shipping large boxes, go look into it. Over $100 potential impact per package,
Mhm.
potential if you meet one of these new criteria. So go read about it. January 26th, it starts. There's more details. Talk to your rep. Get the information.
Absolutely. So we'll keep moving here. Uh, I suppose, sort of, these are the most straightforward surcharges we'll talk about. But so delivery area surcharge. So this is a surcharge again that applies to packages that are delivered specifically to certain zip codes. The amount varies by residential and commercial, but these percentage increases, 6.5 to 7.5%, again, pretty standard. Uh, this change, I suppose, is probably smaller than the other two we've talked about, but it's become a frequent one. Also, with the December 22nd GRI, the zip codes that delivery area surcharges apply to are changing. And like everything else, it's not just a generic, they're changing, so your costs will go up or they'll go down or not change. You have to perform that analysis based on your own volume, to see if these percentages kind of hold up. If not, it might be a little bit more or a little bit less. And then the last one is residential surcharge, ho hum, 6.6%, 6.9%. Uh, it is pretty standard, and residential delivery just continues to get more expensive. That one, I'm not going to justify it, like the percentage necessarily, but those definitely are the packages from the carrier standpoint that are more costly to deliver. So there is an elevated expense, and UPS and other carriers try to maximize their revenue on it.
Yeah, and so residential is more costly because of lower density, lower number of packages per delivery. Is that the what they're looking at?
Mhm. That's the primary one. Yeah, less per delivery stop, and fewer packages per delivery route. Mhm.
Awesome. I
All
think this
right.
is really helpful. Again, there's some great numbers here. If if you're listening to this and after the end you want to rewind on the video, go check out the percentages. Go read about it on the carrier's website and start applying the logic we're talking about here to see how it's going to impact your bottom line because it's not one size fits all.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
And
so
um,
go ahead. I see you got the
I was
FedEx
just
slides here lined up.
going to say, with FedEx, we don't have to dive into all the details here. It is it is very similar. One, I guess, big change or difference rather is it's effective on January 5th. So 2 weeks after um, the UPS GRI. Um, so we get that, I don't know, like that gift from FedEx. We it's a weird thing because you can look at it and say, oh, well, it doesn't happen all the way until January 5th. It's like this psychological thing because the UPS one is earlier. Uh, but I wouldn't really look at it that way. It's very similar. An average 5.9% base rate increase. So we've already talked about that. And the ground or home delivery product, which is their residential ground for FedEx, very similar increases, if not, in some cases, some of those cells are exactly the same. Um, residential delivery, very, very, very similar. Again, in that 6 to 8% range for um, FedEx. Unfortunately, I won't spend a lot of time on it, but it stings. The FedEx fuel surcharge change that was made was actually effective on December 1st. And it was a very short time frame. They announced it the last week of November. And that 1.5% increase in fuel surcharge now is effective the last month of the entire year of 2025. And unfortunately for customers, that's on top of, which we're not going to talk about this today, but on top of demand or peak surcharges that some shippers are having to pay during a high volume period. So costs are already elevated. So FedEx, if you want to look at it this way, um, they're being nice by not raising rates until January 5th. They got the revenue. They got it
Right,
this year.
exactly. I was going to say they snuck in that fuel surcharge increase, which is 1.5%. That is higher than the 1% from UPS. And it started already in December 1st on top of all the demand charges.
Yes, yes. And um, there's a little bit of, I wouldn't call it gamesmanship, I guess, but uh, I can't recall the exact timing, but I want to say, pretty sure UPS announced their increase first, but it's not effective until January. So FedEx saw that and were like, hey, we can probably do you one better, or at least 0.5% better, and jumped in there and knocked it up to 1.5%. So
This reminds me of the meme like, hold my beer.
exactly. Yes, that would be, I think, an appropriate one for sure. So just a call out here. Don't be surprised, UPS customers, if very early in 2026, after the January 5th one, you get another one. I will say it will happen no later than the end of February.
All right, we
Just
got
to,
a prediction. Well, what's really popular these days? These prediction markets. Maybe you and I should start one, and we'll put a prediction together for the next fuel surcharge. We'll talk about that offline.
should. Yeah. I mean, I didn't call it by date, but I did actually through my content multiple times in my newsletter in November say this is coming. So, but it was an easy one. They hadn't done it since June, so it was like, okay, that I'll take that easy one. That's a layup.
I think that'd be a
So
fun one to wager on. I mean, right? Let's
it
there's
would.
something here. All
Yes.
right.
Lots in the
Back
tank.
on track. Residential delivery surcharge with FedEx. I see that's going up as well.
Yep. Yes. Again, standard, but you end up with, it's still a hit to the P&L. That's for home delivery, which is ground. 8.4% is not small. So, um, but then here I'll just say very similarly, we have DAS increases. So I won't go into details there. Actually, it's very similar to UPS. And then also additional handling and oversize, which is synonymous with additional handling charge, I think, and large package from UPS. Also, the criteria is changing. And so in January, and so very similar, it's going to be more volume subject to these surcharges. So if you're seeing a pattern, UPS and FedEx, very often, not always, a lot of their pricing elements, whether it's rate increases or just the published rates themselves, will be very, very similar, if not the same. And we're seeing that, I think, in a lot of the components of this GRI.
So these are the, again, large packages. Go read the criteria is what we're recommending here, and see if any of your packages will start incurring the additional handling or the large package or oversized package charges.
Yes, yes. And just one additional comment specifically on those, because it's a criteria change. And what UPS and FedEx, so there's two things they're trying to do. One is they're really trying to affect behavior. They would like for, maybe some inefficiently packaged items, big bulky, but there's some space in that carton, for package shippers to actually look at their processes and see if they can package more efficiently, make it a little bit smaller and denser. That helps UPS and FedEx with their costs. That's legitimate. I get it. That's actually something that shippers can do, is to review that. Review your container sizes. See if there is an opportunity to package differently, and improve basically kind of the profile of your volume with UPS and FedEx. Now, You can also try to negotiate. Um, Doing that alone, just on that one particular surcharge without influencing anything else, doesn't always get you the best results, but it's probably better than nothing. And you can look for alternatives. That's one I'll just happen to say, and UPS, FedEx obviously know this. There aren't many alternative carriers that either handle this large, bulky volume at all, or if they do, it's not at a kind of national level with an integrated network of moving it from East Coast to West Coast and delivering it. So UPS and FedEx, they know this. They've been doing this a long time. They're trying to also maximize their revenue. So
Exactly. No, those are all very good points. And yeah, I think the highlights here are just, we want to put them forward so that someone can go and really understand how this is going to affect their bottom line.
absolutely.
Anything else on FedEx?
I don't think so.
Okay.
That's ground economy. It's got some of the same increases as ground, so we can actually just go right past that one.
All right, let's do it. I think you've got one more for us, which is the post office, USPS. So
Yeah,
what's changing in 2026 at the
well,
post office?
yeah. So I guess one difference is the timing, or I guess difference compared to UPS and FedEx. So just trying to use that as a comparison. The USPS rate increase is very often around the third week of January, and in this case, it is January 18th. One thing, and it's not on the slides, but just to call out or remind, is the USPS has moved to. They haven't formally said this is always going to happen, but increasing package rates twice a year now. And so there is a rate increase that has happened, I think, the last couple of years, but in July for their package services. And so just something to keep in mind is that with two increases, you're having an increase in the middle of July and then another one in January. So those are going to be cumulative. So just something to keep an eye on. And for clarity, just to make sure we're clear, is that everything that I'm showing here is a percent increase over the rates that are effective right now. So it's not comparing to rates last December. It's comparing to the rates that are currently available, or excuse me, effective from July until now.
Right. This is
And
not year over year. This is
exactly.
July to January.
Right.
It's
Right.
just
So just
an
to
increase after
clarify
6
that.
months.
Yep. And so priority mail. We won't spend too much time here. It's actually a product that is, as far as volume goes for the USPS, has been in decline for many, many years. And that's kind of by design to an extent. They're focusing more on the next one we'll talk about, which is Ground Advantage. So with priority mail, the overall increase, 1 through 70 pounds, which is what you can use it for, is 5.8%. But the lighter weights, which is where many companies do use priority mail, is 6.6% for 1 to 5 pounds. So that is just averaging the rate cells, just to make that clear. But it's still a pretty substantial rate increase. And to determine, again, the impact for a particular shipper, same process. You take your data and use the new rates, calculate what those costs would be, and then compare it to as if you ship the same volume on 2025 rates. So Ground Advantage, I think, is where we want to focus. And so this is the product for the USPS that they've built, developed in the past few years. High growth for them, a high growth service. And there's some interesting stuff going on here. So I'll just get to, I guess, that first interesting part, the main one. So I mentioned earlier that one reason why a carrier would increase rates on a particular volume segment for a service, say higher than they do for other volume segments, is because maybe they've kind of don't have as much competition for that particular weight range. And that's the case to an extent, but that's the case with USPS. Ground Advantage has rates that do go below 1 pound. So they're by 4 ounce kind of blocks, 1 to 4, 5 to 8, and so on. And the increases there are substantial. Total under 1 pound rates increased 12.2%. The 1 to 8
Wow.
ounces, yes.
That's double. That's double what the general rate increases from the other national carriers, let's say on a 1 pound package.
Yes, it is extraordinarily high. And that's actually taking the average of everything under 1 pound. If you just look at the really lightweight, the 8 ounces and less, it's 20.7%, which is, it's incredibly high. Rates don't usually increase for a service that is a high volume service for a lot of customers at that level. And the reason the USPS is doing that, particularly under 9 ounces, I guess, is very few, if any, carriers can, certainly not profitably, but they can't offer competitive pricing that lightweight. Some attempt to, and we can, that's probably, like episode 2 or continue
Right.
the conversation another time. But it's incredibly high, and it's important for customers of the USPS, again, calculate the cost and see. But if you have a high concentration and you ship that with the USPS of, say, jewelry and accessories, probably is the big one. That one will drive a high amount of cost. The only way it won't is if you've got some custom terms in a negotiated agreement. Otherwise, you're going to see it.
So, okay. So 1 to 8 ounces, a 20.7% increase, but overall under a pound, 12.2% increase. Wow.
Yes.
All right. These are big numbers. Anyone that's using USPS, get your new rate sheets, do the analysis, do the pivot tables. Nate,
Mm-hmm.
I think those
If
are
you need to.
going to be helpful. Those are going to be helpful. Figure out what's shipping in those weight ranges. They're going to have the biggest impact. You multiply that by the volume that you're shipping in those weight zone ranges, and you should be able to produce kind of a view of your increase. But wow, 20.7%. But yeah, shaking my head, but go on.
Yes. Yeah. It's a way to maximize revenue. So again, I don't want to, it feels funny for me to say this, but it's good for the USPS, I guess, to try to do that, on their side. Not great for their customers. But the other, I guess, part of the volume segment, the rates for Ground Advantage, is somewhat interesting as well. So 1 to 70 pounds, kind of more traditional weights, and that average is 5.7%. But it is far from a uniform 5.7%. It's actually, there's pretty clear breaks in how the USPS is increasing rates. And it kind of goes back a little bit to what we talked about near the beginning of reasons why. So in this case, we'll go through some of it of, lower increases at times might be, well, maybe we're going to target that volume. Higher increases, it's either I want more revenue for what I have, or I want that volume to kind of exit my network because it's really high cost. So 1 to 7 pounds overall, zones, they have zone 1, but zone 1 through 8 is 7.2%. And that segment is where a lot of companies also have significant volume with Ground Advantage with the Postal Service. Their network, Postal Service, lightweight, small packages, that's what they do. It's what they do best, and they know it. And so they're trying to increase revenue. It's even more if you look at the further distances. So pricing zones are based on distance from where the package is shipped. And so zones 5 through 8, the highest zones, 8.5% average. And so they're really looking to grow some volume there, revenue there. And the way this is broken down shows exactly why you need, as a package shipper, need to understand how it impacts your costs. Because if we just look at the 5.7% for 1 to 70 pounds, there's a lot of variability in this, breakdown. Um, because 8 to 20 pounds, the average is 4.4%, including no increase for zones 1 through 4. I was a little
I
surprised to
guess
see
that's
that.
good. I guess that's good, right? No
It is.
increase.
It is.
Did they forget? Like, what do you think happened?
It's actually,
Did someone
I don't think they forgot.
had an incorrect formula?
You know what? I It could be because I don't. I am surprised to see it, at least the all the way up to 20. And it's because usually a package, not all of them, but that weighs 15, 18, 20 pounds is probably a little bit bigger and or kind of a larger package. And that is not traditionally, at least, what the Postal Service wants in their network. It's it's designed for lightweight. You've got a mail carrier that some of them, I mean, if they can put in the mailbox, like that's money. That's what they want to do. If not, they've got to get out of the truck and walk it. And I can't imagine too many 20-pound packages that are going to fit in a mailbox. So I don't know. That one's a little puzzling. And then, the 21 and up is 5.8%. That's I don't think that's a needle mover either way. I don't think they've got as much volume there. Most package shippers probably don't see a lot of volume there. So that's really, I think, the biggest impact that we'll see kind of in the market or package shippers will is ground advantage. And that's the product that USPS is growing. And there's some interesting rate increases for sure.
Yeah, to say the least. To say the least. Well, I appreciate you breaking it down. This is really, I think, easy to understand, and it's going to make a lot of people think really hard about estimating the cost increase, because I mean, talk about 20%, 5.9% increase, a 20% increase. What does that do to your bottom line?
Right. And one more note on that is that's obviously a really large increase. What companies should do, especially if you're a high volume shipper, you probably already know this, but still, is even up to that 7 pounds. So that 7.2%, 1 to 7 pounds, that's not small. These increases might be enough for you to relook at how it compares to other carriers' costs. You might want to look at other options that before maybe the USPS was the most cost effective, but now they might not be. And so I think this is probably a good example of where I would say in many cases it would make sense to at least explore and understand what some other regional carriers, kind of alternative, like e-commerce focused carriers can do with the pricing and the service, to see now if maybe there's benefit to working with some other carriers as opposed to the USPS for some of those volume segments.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's lots of alternatives out there in the market, and in each one of these, right? In the lightweight and maybe even the heavier weight, go look at those alternatives. That's a really good suggestion. Do you have anything else to share about USPS uh,
Um,
and their increase?
just the only other thing, and this will be very brief, I think, because Parcel Select is the product that most companies as a package shipper, they don't really use Parcel Select as much because it's based on taking the volume and inducting it into the Postal Services network. So companies like, Amazon is large enough to do that themselves. Not many retailers do it. Some carrier partners, they call postal workshare partners of the USPS, DHL e-commerce, I would just say probably is the most notable one. Uh, DHL e-commerce uses Parcel Select. So just calling this out, there are increases. It's kind of, I'm going to call it the normal range, but pretty much 5 to 6%. So if you work with a DHL e-commerce or another carrier that uses Parcel Select, you'll see an increase. Part of it is going to be based on what we see right here.
Yeah,
Um,
and that's a good point that you're making, because we're highlighting the three large national carriers here that account for the majority of the market, but there's a lot of alternative carriers out there as well, and consolidators, and so they may not have a rate increase. So it's really good to understand right, each one of your
Hmm.
carriers in your network, what their rate increase is, because they're going to be a little bit different. We're not going to have time to cover every single one today, but we know there's other alternative carriers that will have increases. So go talk to your carrier and figure out what if they haven't communicated to you yet, and understand if there's an increase or not.
Exactly. All right. So I think that's
Awesome.
all I got on the postal service.
No, this has been really great. Thank you, one, for creating these slides, because you're basically summarizing all of that information and doing the math for us, right? Someone would have to go and uh, look at spreadsheets and do a bunch of comparisons. You've already kind of summarized what we really need to know here, and so really appreciate it. And if are there and I think this really shows why it's important, like especially at this time of year, to take account, right, and apply some of the logic here that Nate's presented, to see how it's going to affect your business, and then think about what does that mean as a whole? Because Nate, to your point, I totally agree with you. If the rate goes up by a certain amount that's higher than the national average GRI, well, another alternative carrier or another national carrier may be a better option for you to save money. So this is really the time to start planning going into 2026.
Absolutely.
So appreciate you sharing this. I know you've got a few other things for us. I know one of the things okay, so a lot of this is math and kind of, it's kind of dry, but it's exciting for stuff for
I
guys like
love it.
us,
So
right? Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
I was gonna say it's exciting for guys like us because it's like inside baseball. Let's go through it and let's share the knowledge. But one of the things, and going back to your LinkedIn posts and the insights you share, sometimes they're not the numbers and details. So wanted to have a little bit of fun here as well, and wanted to share some of I think one of the things I appreciate about you is you do keep it fun, you do keep it entertaining, and yeah, I wanted to jump into this right here, which are Nate's memes. So we're gonna do a meme segment for you guys, and yeah, what's like going in your what's going on in your mind when you're posting on a professional networking
oh,
website
right.
memes? Come on, Nate. Like,
It's so here's the thing. Like you were talking about it at the kind of at the beginning there that we love this stuff, right? So going through whether it's rates, contracts, all those things, uh, the list is pretty short. At least I think of the people who probably like it as much as we do, or at least maybe find it as interesting as we do. And so, a long time ago, I mean, years ago, I was trying to introduce some humor and at least try to get some attention, not for the sake of clicks and attention, but to stop the scrolling, and then there's actual information to look at. Usually, not always. We'll look at some other ones, but and so that's what I was really trying to do, and I've had a lot of fun with it. I mean, this one, basically that was the only reason. It was like I've got this completely just like childish humor kind of aspect of my personality, and so Ron Burgundy fits that perfectly. And that's probably a little overdone, but I Ron Burgundy's a go-to for sure. Um,
absolutely.
so that's what this was. But and I don't have the all the other slides here, but what that is like, hey, by the way, I mean it's Ron Burgundy. There are I think it's demand surcharges, right? There's surcharges that you need to actually rate increases you need to pay attention to. And then there's the actual, things like we just talked about. So that's the reason. Sometimes it doesn't quite get that detailed or valuable. Um, but this one, it kind of did. So this is really relevant because we talked about the fuel surcharge increase from FedEx, the very recent one. And I don't know, it just immediately popped into my head of Grinch. And I thought, okay, I mean, because holidays were this was announced actually right before the end of November. I was like, okay, if I can come up with something pretty quickly, I don't spend a lot of time on this, by the way, like this part of it. Uh, and I did, and this was Gemini. I just threw a prompt in, and it was one shot, and came out with a purple or a Grinch in a purple Santa suit, FedEx. Admittedly, I added the logo, which maybe I shouldn't have, but whatever. And that just kind of gets a little bit of attention to say, stop and look at it. And then, oh, by the way, there's something you should really care about here, right? A big
Totally.
fuel surcharge
Totally. Yeah, I
increase.
mean, it's an
But I had about something.
attention grabber. You want to deliver the
Right.
information, but not in a dry way. It's an attention grabber. Everyone should stop because a 1.5% increase, you should absolutely stop and figure it out. So I love this one.
Yes.
It's like Grinch stole the holiday with a 1.5% increase. Okay. So,
Right.
but you mentioned Google Gemini. You mentioned Google Gemini.
Yes.
Are we going to see a lot more memes from Nate because of
Uh,
these large language models?
we'll see. So I'm going to explain this real quick because this one is interesting. All right. So here's one that had no practical value. It was just, I don't even know why I thought of it. Something came up. I was reading something. It was probably about the I don't know, about the rate increases, or somebody asked me a question actually about the strategy of UPS and FedEx. So jokingly, I just mentioned about one kind of modeling or mimicking the other. And so I decided to go ahead and create this. This is through Gemini. Here's the kind of funny thing. I don't use it that often. Like AI, I'm way behind most people. I'm just going to say that right now. But I used it and I was really surprised. Prompt, I didn't anything on the board except for like the strategies, except for the X's and check marks, which I included in the prompt. Everything else was from Gemini. I didn't populate any of that. What I did was I did include images of both executives. And so that is why it is as good as it is. If
It's really good. It's really
like
good. I
most
mean, you got
people
two,
are gonna know this,
you got
right?
UPS and FedEx CEOs on here,
Right. Okay.
and I think one is kind of like copying the other one's homework. Is that what we're seeing?
That is it. Raj and Carol. I mean, we're on a first name basis. Just
Why not?
is leaning over, kind of copying or attempting to, I guess, Carol Tomei's UPS strategy. Here's kind of the interesting part. I went to do something similar, not with these two people, a couple days later, and got denied. So Gemini basically said, "Hey, sorry, we can't do that anymore. We can't create images of specific people. If you'd like to describe a person, we can, render something
Interesting.
that's." And I asked why. I said, "So I just did this 2 days ago," and it said, "Well, our policies change, and it might have slipped by us or by the first time, but not this time. So we'll see. I don't know. I got to tread lightly sometimes."
All right. Well, you know what? We'll offer a rebuttal to both CEOs if they want to come on the podcast and talk about their strategies. They would love open invite.
That would be great. I don't hear from them as much as I would like, but and then last one here, just real quick. This is so admittedly 100%. This is overdone. I've used this far too many times, but I don't know if this is good or bad, but this is a, image of, and it's a GIF, so it's kind of frozen here, but of Amazon, burning money, right? So they're shoveling cash into the furnace. And I've used it a few different times with actual like relevance. And almost ashamed to admit that those posts probably account for like 3 of my top 5 posts ever from an impression standpoint. And the top one, this one happened to be 297,000.
That's a lot, by the way. That is a big number of impressions.
I'm not sure what that says about like my overall content, that most of my top 5 happens to be
People
this
like, hey,
meme.
listen, people like the memes. Okay, just give them more memes. I think that's
Yeah.
where we're at.
Yeah, I guess so. So I don't want to overdo it. I've got kind of my cadence, maybe 2 to 3 at the most a week, Friday afternoons. That's kind of my thing. So we'll see.
Awesome. Well, keep cranking out the memes. We really enjoy it. And keep posting, keep sharing the information.
Mhm.
Do you have any more, or do you want to stop
That's it.
the share? You can stop the share then. Cool. Awesome. Well, I appreciate it. Let's just wrap it up here. I think we've provided a lot of info. We looked at all these increases together now and explained kind of what some of the inside baseball and what's going on. Um, if you're talking to a shipper today, or a shipper's listening to the to this podcast, and they're seeing this information, like, what do you recommend they do to plan for 2026, especially as they are worried about cost continuing to climb for them?
Well, I think, and this might sound simplistic, but the first and the biggest step is we talked about it a lot. You have to assess what the impact is of these rate increases on your costs. And if you're able to do that yourself, that's great. Like, do that, perform the calculations. If not, then if you don't already have a partner in place, Parcel Spend Management partner or consulting partner, then that is, one of many good reasons, but one, to actually seek out a partner to help you understand that impact. So that is like table stakes. That should be done. It's not easy, but that's where you start. And then that helps to identify next steps if there are any. Like, if there's anything actionable that you can do, then maybe that is, renegotiating a portion of your contract. It could be, evaluating alternative carriers to see if moving volume to them will help, improve service or offset cost. Or it could be some operational changes. We talked about changing packaging. So, there's no one size fits all of you take these 5 steps and then you have your optimized parcel program and completely avoid the GRI. If there were 5 steps, then we probably wouldn't be talking right now. Um, but it has to start with that analysis, and so that's where it's getting into all the details to truly understand the impact. Then you can determine what to do about it.
Yeah, well said. And again, thanks for sharing all your insights here. Really appreciate learning, enjoyed learning about your journey to building your company, LPF Spend Management, and diving into the increases going into 2026. One more thing, Nate, where can people learn more about your work, or if they want to connect with you?
Yeah, I think the best way, easiest way is on LinkedIn. So follow me on LinkedIn. You can DM me. I am pretty responsive. Try to be. I also have as far as kind of, seeing some of my work and the content, a free weekly newsletter called Special Delivery, and on my website. Also, website is lpfspendmanagement.com.
Awesome. Well, we'll link it in the show notes. Nate, again, thanks for joining me. Really had a blast. Enjoyed this conversation.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome to come back. Yeah, of course. You're welcome to come back on the pod anytime. I think we maybe we'll make it an annual thing. Let's see what the audience thinks. Uh,
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. Maybe we'll come up with some prop bets for the next one.
for sure, for sure. Well, listeners, as always, subscribe to the Logistics Remix channel on YouTube for more conversations that make sense of shipping. Give us a like, and thank you for listening. I look forward to seeing you next time.